Hey, what's going on, guys? Well, today we're looking at this beast of a knife, this big old hunk of steel and parts. This is a Pohl Alpha 2. All right, and this is supposed to be a tactical survival folder. All right, this one is in 440C. All right, if you're not a fan of 440C, this same knife is available in D2. I think it's the Alpha 3. See a little marking there, the Alpha 2 marking. But there is an Alpha 3, I believe that one is in D2, and that one also has a glass breaker in the bottom, if that's something that floats your boat. But I was offered this in a trade, and at first, like most times I'm offered something in a trade, I go, nah. And then immediately after I think, nah, I go, all right. Why? Why, Jeff? Why would you do that? Well, I'll explain to you. Because I make YouTube videos. That's pretty much it. There's probably thousands of knives that I would never think to get. Never really had interest in trying. Never really wanted them, you know, but I get them anyway because I like the variety and because I like trying different knives out. So this is basically what I'm saying is I would never walk into a store and say, oh, I gotta have that thing. However, because I do review knives, I want to try it. And I did, and I have some opinions, and that's why I'm talking to a camera right now. So, yeah, the Alpha 2. Before I get into the actual knife, let's talk about this thing. This is the pouch that came with it. Because I got this used in a trade, I didn't get the certificate of authenticity, which does come with these knives. These are serialized, all right, and they do have a matching, you know, certificate of authenticity, which is good for collector's purposes or for resale. All right, so there's a serial number on here. And I obviously don't have the box that it came in. But I do have this, and they all include this nice pouch. Now, I will say, the price on this is around 240 bucks, okay, new. $240. I very much appreciate the fact that if you're buying a $240 knife, you get something cool like this. This is a very, very nice pouch. So we have a very thick, sturdy, padded pouch that has two pockets, so you can put two different knives, and obviously they're crisscrossed here, so when it's closed, the metal parts that are sticking out are not rubbing against each other, so you have, you know, you could safely store two large folders in here. And it gets a little, or you get a little removable patch, which is pretty cool. It literally shows the knife. I think that's awesome. Pohl says knives for the world's elites. I think any knife that's over 150 bucks, 200 bucks should come with something like this. So A+ for accessories. I will say that. I want a custom patch with a picture of my knife if I'm paying a lot of money for it. Of course, most knives do not come with stuff like that. So I do appreciate that, but let's get it out of the frame because we want to talk about the knife. So yeah, Pohl made in Italy. Pohl is the company, but this is physically manufactured by Lanyard. And a lot of people might be more familiar with Lanyard as a company. I think they also make some other knives for, yeah, they make knives for other companies. But yeah, very good quality. Overall, the quality is outstanding. Fit and finish is very good on this knife. It's just a specific niche here. We have a huge tactical folder, and there's a lot of tactical in this. If you didn't notice, this thing is tactical. Now it's touted as a survival knife because it's just so large and, you know, heavy duty, right? Let's go over some specs real quick, just so you get a real idea of this in my hands. Our blade here is 4.4 inches. Recurve blade's a little bit harder to sharpen, not a huge deal here. The advantage, if you don't know, because the blade goes up here before you get that belly, as you're cutting a medium, let's say I'm cutting my hand, which I'm clearly not going to, but as you're cutting it, the medium is up here already, whatever material you're cutting into, and now that large belly is forced deeper into the cut. So it's very good for slicing. That's the advantage of it. Some people love the way they look. Some people don't. They avoid them at all costs because they can't figure out how to sharpen them. Obviously, you just need, I mean, you could do it on a flat stone with a little bit more skill, but any kind of rod or, you know, guide system that has rods would hug those curves a lot better. This is not like a crazy recurve. It's actually pretty slight, as you can see. I mean, it's just a slight angle up and then back down and back up. All right, so we have this S pattern. Some recurves out there are pretty much S patterns. This one's kind of stretched out. If you grab both ends of the S, pull them apart, you'd get this. But very interesting blade and very large at almost 4.5 inches. All right, closed here, 5.7 inches. It is a very large handle. There's actually 3 different grips you can use with this knife, which I'll show you in a minute. The handle scales are an FRN. You see they're kind of wavy textured. Stainless steel liners on both sides. This is 10.2 inches overall. Yes, it's a beast of a knife. Now, it might be hard to see. Maybe if I can zoom in here, make it a better shot of this, but it's a little dark in there. It is skeletonized heavily on both sides. Now, me telling you this is a large knife and it's skeletonized, both liners, pretty much all the metal they could have removed from the liners have been removed. What do you think this thing weighs? Well, you gotta speak up a little, I can't hear you. Okay, yeah, that was kind of a lame joke, but I'm gonna tell you, it weighs 10 ounces. 10 ounces for a folding knife with skeletonized liners on both sides. Yeah, that's heavy. And let me tell you something, when you're carrying this knife, you know it's heavy. It's in your pocket, it's dragging down your pants. You guys know I carry a lot of gear. So to have a knife, to have 10 ounces dedicated to my knife, that's a lot, okay? It is very thick. The blade here is 5 millimeters thick, okay? So it is on the chunky side. So let's skip over to this, this pocket clip here. We have a wire clip, very Spyderco-esque. It does work well. I am a fan of wire clips because this lands in these grooves here. You do get a little bit of resistance when you're pulling this out of the pants, but it's really not much at all. This is actually quite smooth. I mean, it looks textured, and besides the actual surface being, having small texturing in it, there's obviously all these waves and grooves in here. Looks like the ocean, all the waves. But even then, it's still kind of smooth to touch. Nothing is extra grippy here at all. It's all very smooth. Once the knife is open and your fingers wrap around, it doesn't feel like extra grippy at all. It's actually quite comfortable. But yeah, I mean, just rubbing your fingers on here, and when your fingers wrap around and in the hand, you don't really feel a lot of texture, but it is offering a little bit of grip there. But yeah, so the pocket clip carries like this. So you're seeing basically that much of the knife. We have a huge lanyard hole here, which obviously is similar hardware to the oversized pivot area. Very nicely done. So if you want to throw a lanyard, I mean, a knife like this, I'm guessing most of the people who own these probably throw a lanyard with a massive bead on it. If you have one of those beads that's like 2 ounces, just huge piece of artwork basically, this is the knife to throw it on. Okay, so if you're a lanyard person, this is definitely a lanyard knife. All right, here's another close-up. You can see the hardware is flathead, which is nice. Different flatheads for the body screws. Okay. On the back here again, serial number, and then Pohl design. It's actually raised up out of the back spacer here. Let's talk about ergonomics, because this is where this thing shines and also falls behind. It's extremely disappointing because I cannot stand this thumb disc. Now there's a thumb disc here, which you could see as like this heavy jimping. It's super uncomfortable. Just pushing this blade, I mean, it's kind of sharp. And naturally, because I want to hold it, it's so big, I want to hold it down here more, and it's even worse on an angle. It's a little bit better coming from the side, but it's just uncomfortable. Now, what are the other opening options? There's no flipper here, there's no thumb stud. You have that, and you have a nail nick. Now, the nail nick to me makes no sense whatsoever where it's placed. Reason being is, as you know from a lot of slip joints, sometimes they're a little bit harder to open. There's a strong back spring, which this one has a decent back spring, but it's not super strong or anything. But when you have a nail nick, it's because there's no blade to hold on to. Clearly, there's so much blade sticking out here. I'd rather do that and open it with 2 hands than to use my nail nick. It makes no sense. I can appreciate a nail nick sometimes. If the nail nick was down here where you don't have much to hold, that kind of makes sense because you have more leverage. But I don't know why. No idea why it's there. Don't know why you would open it that way. You can open it with 2 hands by grabbing the blade like that. Or if you wanted to, even without using this, I'm actually doing a pinch grip on the blade itself. And you can kind of start it and then use that thumb disc to finish it the rest of the way. But yeah, 9 out of 10 times when I took this out of my pocket, see it's a tip down right side carry, pulled it out, and used my other hand. Why? It was way more comfortable than using that thumb disc. So very disappointing in the ergonomics on that. Opening it stinks. Did not like doing it. That being said, once it was open, it's a dream. There's 3 different grips you can have with this knife. Now, this does not look comfortable. It looks like too much. It looks like my fingers are gonna land where those points are and I'm not gonna like it, but I did. I loved it. So the first grip is all the way down here. You can see pointer finger, middle finger land on this little flat area in this kind of half moon shape here. Then the pinky and the ring finger land on the bottom. Thumb lands here right on the serial number, and you have a lot of reach, okay? Let's move the hand up a little. Just slide up just a little. Now I got the pointer finger in this finger choil here. These two finger lands on this shelf, and then the pinky lands right underneath, exactly where it's supposed to. This is extremely comfortable. Also, we have a thumb rest with jimping, not super purposeful or anything, but definitely better than, you know, not having anything there. You could feel a little bit of grip. Personally, I don't really care about jimping. If I never saw jimping on a knife ever again, I wouldn't start crying or anything. I know some people would, but for me, it's not really a big deal. But it's semi-purposeful. If there was a scale 1 to 10, 1 being completely glass smooth and 10 being, I don't know, shark skin, I suppose this was probably a 2 or 3, to give you a reference. But anyway, extremely comfortable. Now, that being said, for my hands, these are perfectly comfortable. If you had bigger hands than me, your ring finger would probably land here on that point. If you had smaller hands than me, your pinky would probably land on that point. So in the most natural position, because this is probably the most used position, it may be uncomfortable depending on the size of your hand. Like I say, when you get into heavy, you know, designs and stuff like that, heavy angles, you either get super comfortable or super uncomfortable. So that's position number 2, the most natural position. Also, we can move up a third time. And we move up a third time, you can see there's another finger choil here, middle finger goes there, these two fingers rest on that shelf, and then your thumb rests right here, perfectly. So if you want to choke up on the blade, extremely comfortable for my hand size, which is just a large hand. So we have back here, which gives you tons of reach. Then we have like a normal grip, most people are going to use. Then we have the choke up grip for fine cutting, I don't know, peeling an apple, what have you. Now, as far as reverse grip, same deal. You can come all the way down if you wanted to. You can go right to the middle or go all the way up. So similar, you know, feeling on the reverse grip. Again, didn't really use a reverse grip. I almost never do. I'll feel it. I'll put in a reverse grip just to see how it feels. And maybe I'll stab. In this particular case, I happen to stab wood, but a lot of times I'm not even stabbing anything except for maybe a cardboard box. Just want to see if my hands get a slide or anything. But yeah, extremely awesome ergonomics and holding options once the knife's open. But again, my problem is opening it. I don't like using this thumb disc. Okay, I probably, in this particular design, I mean, you could keep the thumb disc, but just, you don't need this heavy, I don't know what that is. It's unnecessary. I did try this knife with gloves, only one time, much more comfortable with gloves. So if you're purposely putting on gloves, going outside and using this in the woods, not as much of an issue. If you're EDCing it, which I don't know why you would EDC this particular knife, but if you did, way uncomfortable. I always go with the 2 hands when I'm opening this, just naturally, because I just remember as I'm pulling it out, I'm going, yeah, I'm not gonna like that, just use the 2 hands. But yeah, as far as the lockup, you can see this is a lock back design because there's that little, you know, dent in here, the Boyd dent, as we all know it, makes it very comfortable to disengage that lock. Okay, very easy to do. The lockup is very good. I would say the side to side is non-existent, no wiggle at all. The up and down is like 99.5. If I crank on this thing up and down, you can actually hear it. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit of play. Probably the least amount of play you can have and say there's play in the knife. All right, but that's how I got the knife. I don't know if that's exactly, you know, if there's a tiny bit of up and down from factory. Again, one of the downsides of getting knives used, you don't really know those things for sure. Now this knife is sold, again, as a folding survival knife. Right off the bat, I will tell you, if you're looking for a good knife that you can rely your life on, do not buy a folder, period. I don't care how strong it is, I don't care how thick it is, I don't care who makes it, I don't care how expensive it is, I don't care what blade steel it has. If you're gonna go into the woods or the desert or wherever, you're going into the wild, Mother Nature is welcoming you in, you better have a fixed blade. You should probably have a couple of them. I don't condone any folders in any outdoor situations. It's cool that a lot of people make them. Cold Steel makes a ton of knives that can really take a beating and still keep on ticking. I just don't suggest it. You go fixed blade. I'd much rather have a cheap Mora than this $200+ you know, tactical folder. It's just because it's a folder. That's it. All locks, even though they're strong, even though like the triad locks on Cold Steel knives, they put up with all that abuse, I still want a fixed blade. I want a full tank fixed blade. So let me get that out of the way right away. Don't recommend this for a survival knife. It's a very cool collectible and it's still a very usable knife. However, there's some drawbacks to it. Obviously, its size, its weight, 10 ounces. Okay, 10 ounces, 10.2 inches. Not an easy knife to carry and use every day. Still cool though. A hell of a collectible. I will say that. It's very cool. Obviously, if you collect knives, you want to get something from every company out there. At least that's what I always thought. A well-rounded collection, you should have a representation from every company, pretty much. Of course, if you can afford that, or if you have the next 50 years to start collecting. Now, even though this would definitely not be my first choice for a survival knife, it is definitely by far better than most, I would say, folders out there for a survival type situation. It is overbuilt. It is a heavy-duty knife. But that being said, things can break. And in fact, I was talking to someone on Instagram. They're just saying, hey, how's it going? Any new knives lately? And this is at the point when I did the trade, but I didn't get the knife yet. So this was still in the mail on its way to me. And I mentioned, like, yeah, I'm getting a Pohl Force Alpha 2. Kind of excited to use it. It's a heavy-duty knife. And the person wrote back and said, oh, you got to check out this video. And I said, oh, I'll just wait until the review's done. Because I don't like watching knife videos on a knife that I'm actually testing, because I don't want to get any influence whatsoever. I don't want to hear something someone said and it sticks in my mind and it makes me feel that way, because you can be influenced by what people say. So I really try very hard to stay away from looking at any kind of content when I'm testing a knife or, go to review one. But this person said, no, you really got to check this out. All right, fine. So I clicked on the video. It was, I don't know what language the guy was talking and I couldn't understand it, but he was basically comparing this Alpha 2 to a cold steel knife. And if memory serves me, I think it was a Spartan. He was just doing some hard use and abuse testing and stuff. And the Pohl Force broke. And what happened was, I think he was doing a spine whack test, but you can see it is a lock back. And if you don't know, this bar right here, this lock bar, has basically an end on it. It's like a protrusion, right? And there's a notch cut in the back of the blade. And when this is fully open, it locks in. So let's say this is the notch, right? And here's the lock back. When it's in this position locked, it looks like this. If I can line this up. Okay. So when you push down here, you're lifting this up, and that allows the blade to rotate. Does that make sense? So you're opening it, it goes, that's what's happening. This is rubbing around this and just locking in place. So what happened was, doing the spine whack test, it put a lot of pressure on the end of this notch. And that piece right there, which kind of comes to somewhat of a point, it snapped off. It broke off, literally. So the knife would no longer lock. It was like, just like that. So there you go. Even though this is a very expensive, completely overbuilt survival knife, it just won't last certain tests. Every knife has its breaking point. Every knife will fail if you keep pushing it to a certain limit. Now, that being said, it didn't dissuade me much. I mean, I'm not doing spine whack tests. The only time I hit a spine of a blade with any kind of force whatsoever, when I'm purposely doing a spine whack test. Some people are for them. They say, look, if I can't go there like this with my knife a million times, and if it's going to fail, I'm not going to carry the knife because I don't feel safe. I don't want to chop my fingers off. And then the other, the other ideal is that you're not going to hit the spine of the knife. You're not putting pressure this way on the knife. You're putting pressure this way because you're cutting things with your knife. You're not using it as a hammer, But some people they have different preferences, different needs, different wants in a knife. So if you're into spine whack testing, this one's probably not for you. Okay, because if you get this and you spine whack it, it might break. I mean, the guy was using quite a bit of force there, obviously. And again, I consider that an abuse test. And I think it's awesome that people do abuse testing, because if you're paying $240, for a knife, the first thing you're not going to do is take it out of the box and try to break it. You know what I mean? So my point, I guess, is that it's not indestructible. You can break it relatively easily if you're doing, abuse testing on it. But I don't think that, most people getting this knife to actually use it are going to do, an accidental spine whack test. I've talked about this a couple times in the past, and people have said, well, you can accidentally bang it on something. I completely agree. If you're cutting something and then you just turn, here's a wall, you just turn, yeah, you can whack the spine, but you're not going to whack it with the same force when you're trying to do a test. Just my personal opinion. Yeah, it did not pass a spine whack test. If that means something to you, there you go, there's the information. But it doesn't bother me, it doesn't concern me. And it doesn't make me think that this is not a hard use knife, because it still is a very hard use knife, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, my overall thoughts, when I first got this, I mean, I already knew what it looked like from looking at pictures after I was offered the trade. I'm like, oh, I kind of know what that looks like. But I looked it up, Google images, I'm like, okay, yeah. The first thing this reminded me of, this handle pattern, is one of the Schrade knives. There's a Schrade model that has a very similar type handle pattern. And, and overall, it is tactical. You know what I mean? It's got that like mall ninja kind of thing going for it. But I have to say, it is very well built. Lion Steel does make good cutlery. All right, the quality is there. The 440C is done very well. I don't know what they're doing with the heat treat on this, but it did hold a decent edge for 440. I did like that quite a bit. I don't mind the recurve as far as sharpening, just because I have experience with it. It may be, a downside to some people, it may be a bonus. There's so many different, preferences when it comes to knives. I'm trying to give you an overall picture, but I also, when I give an opinion that has to do with preference, I try to, mention that. Like the recurve, good or bad, it depends on who you're talking to. You know what I mean? Lockback, good or bad, depends on who you're talking to. So I can't really do like a knife review and say, oh, I hate that it's a lockback. If I don't like lockbacks, that's just a preference. It doesn't mean the knife's bad. But I happen to like lockbacks, and I happen to think that this, even with the hair of up and down, which you can hear when I'm quiet, doesn't bother me enough to send the knife back or anything like that. So yeah, my overall opinion, it's a lot of money. If you like the design, it's cool. It's definitely a very nice collectible. It is a nice piece of cutlery. If you're thinking you're going to buy this thing and go out in the woods and start hacking trees down, you're wrong. It's probably going to eventually break doing that. And again, I wouldn't choose any folder, regardless, for a survival type knife or a woodsman, type knife. But I still like it. It's just as comfortable as these grips are and all these grip options. I love that, but again, I just cannot do this thumb disc. So opening it is uncomfortable. That is enough for me to not want to carry it. Plus 10 ounces, that's not helping anything. So, a little bit bent on this one. Wouldn't recommend it. If this was around $100, I might be more open, to some of the issues, as far as, the thumb disc goes. But it's not. It's $240 plus, depending on where you get it. Let's just call it a $200+ knife. For that, I don't tolerate, I would say, an uncomfortable opening method. So that's that. Also, just as a quick note, you do have enough ricasso here that if you put your finger up towards the second finger choil, because here's the first one, right? Here's the second one, and you let that blade drop, you're not going to cut yourself. So it's kind of like a Spyderco dealio there. So when you are closing this knife, you don't necessarily have to use two hands. You can just drop that blade, and you're not going to cut yourself. Right, just a quick little note. But anyway, that's the Pohl Force Alpha 2. My favorite thing about this knife, the very, very cool sheath that comes with it, or I don't know, padded case, let's call it. It's not a sheath, it's a case. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a sad thing or a nice thing, but yeah, knife is kind of take it or leave it. In fact, I will probably sell this. So if you're following me on Instagram, check it out. It'll be up for sale soon, I guess. Or you can send a message if you're interested. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just for the price. I don't like opening it. If I don't like opening my knife, I'm probably not going to carry it and use it. But if you're into the big heavy duty folders, this should certainly be on your radar and on your list of stuff to at least try out. So there's my opinions on the Pohl Force Alpha 2. Thanks for watching. If you guys have experience with this knife, let me know down in the comments. This is my first Pohl Force knife. It didn't turn me off at all to the company. I would very much like to try some of the other designs. I like a lot of their models. But the opportunity to trade for this one and try it out, it popped up, and I did. So, been there, done that, moving on. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Take care.